Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of All Access AM. Happy Wednesday. I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for joining us here on the show. And I got to apologize. Forgot about an all-day conference around the sports business world that was taking place in Dallas that I was set to attend on Monday. So no Monday show, but lots of takeaways, lots of learnings from that summit. And I'll share some of my thoughts with you guys on that later on because it ties into the ACC. It ties into some of the things that we're seeing around the country with athletic departments in terms of revenues, in terms of trends, all of those things. So we will cover that on All Access AM this morning after we do some basketball transfer portal recap news. And we'll also, of course, evaluate the news that broke just earlier this week with Florida State naming Ashton Daniels their starting quarterback. I'll give my thoughts on what Daniels brings to that Seminoles offense as they will look to save Mike Norvell's job for yet another season. We'll see if Ashton Daniels can be a part of getting that done. Appreciate you guys tuning in for us here on All Access AM. We are here Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 8 to 9 a.m. Central Time, and we are looking forward to a great show today presented by our friends at OPW Solutions. OPW Solutions, make sure you give them a call today, 214-444-2305, or email info@opwsolutions.com. You can get the lowdown on all their commercial landscaping, pressure washing, snow and ice control, fence, concrete repair, and more, what they can do for you, what they can do to help make sure your business is prepared for any of those situations over the course of your company's life and what you would expect during some of those things that you might need. A company like OPW Solutions, if you're in North Texas, if you're in Oklahoma, if you're in Arkansas, to take care of those things. So make sure you check them out, opwsolutions.com. As we turn the page from transfer portal entries, which, to set the stage for you guys, the transfer portal window closed at midnight. And we did see some last minute additions to the transfer portal. We saw some Florida State players opt to head into the portal. And I'm sure we'll see some others trickle in because there is that 48-hour window that programs have to submit players into the transfer portal. And because it's in the middle of the week when the transfer portal ended for basketball, they have to submit them, and they will actually be submitted, and we'll find out in the course of the 48 hours versus football, which their portal window actually closed, I believe, on a Friday, which means that the compliance departments from schools around the country didn't actually have their 48-hour clock start until Monday and Tuesday because it's, of course, business days. So this year, or with the basketball portal, we'll see a little bit more of those types of entries pop up rather quickly, in a sense, and news will break around a lot of those. I would assume over the course of the next few really days. I mean, the next couple days, but then we'll see some of those players start to go through their recruitments. Guys can still be recruited. They can still take visits. They can do all those things as they try to figure out what they want to do for their future. So tons to get to on the show today, and in particular, Duke, Carolina, Louisville, SMU, among those making a splash in the transfer portal here lately. And we will kind of break it all down for you guys. And then, like we did with football, try to bring on some folks who cover these programs day to day to really break down these teams, break down how they did in the portal. And when we bring those guys on, and gals, of course, Alexis Cubitt of Louisville is always one. But when we bring them on, we'll also get some of the recaps of spring football formally ending for a lot of these programs. So let's jump in here. Duke, and I do love the Twitter world that we live in. X, I still call it Twitter. The Twitter world we live in, where the memes, the graphics, the shock value are always there, and they deliver, especially during the portal. And Duke is one of those programs that was a part of the group of blue bloods in college basketball that for a long time did not have a commitment or what really was considered to be a long time. Well, with the portal, with this run that we've seen, I think one of the things that I picked up on and learned throughout this year's portal window is agents are being more deliberate, players are being more deliberate. You're seeing visits actually get taken. Of course, we know that there's all sorts of NIL promises and revenue sharing contracts and all of those things that have to happen in today's world of college basketball. But Duke really did not have a transfer portal commitment until what, Monday, and or was it Sunday? Sunday they got Drew Skarnowski from um, Belmont. So when you when you try to look at these things, and you would think Duke in particular would be one of those programs that would have their next up guy locked in, would have their player ready to rock and roll, would be able to, grab whoever they wanted in the transfer portal and go behind closed doors and just go ahead and get those guys done on the front side of things. But even Duke, even schools like Kansas, some of those others that have been, not dealt with coaching searches or coaching changes, but even they took a minute to get some of these players to go ahead and pledge them. But Duke has, of course, stepped in and reloaded with two critical additions in the transfer portal now. And one of them, the latest one, we'll talk about and why it's so huge in a second. But Duke did add Belmont transfer power forward Drew Skarnowski to the Blue Devils, who's first team All Missouri Valley and was an all defensive team honoree. So, of course, somebody that fits that mold for Duke, one of the top defensive teams in college basketball, of course. 30 games, 24 starts, 10.7 points, 6 rebounds, 2.6 assists across 21 minutes. So I got to imagine, and again, this is why I said we're going to bring on some of the people that maybe know that roster, like our friend Connor O'Neill, a little bit better. But this screams to me that when you add a Drew Skarnowski, you're going to add him as a player who is going to be competing for, like, obviously minutes, but it doesn't necessarily scream starter for me. I don't know. But that's where we'll get some of that answered as far as, our friend Connor O'Neill breaking it down with us, because, Duke also got another big commitment in a sense this week, as they got, of course, Pat Ngungba announcing his return for his junior season. He started 28 games. Of course, he was injured late in the season. It cost him a little bit of time in the NCAA tournament, not playing his usual minutes, 13, 16, 22 minutes in the NCAA tournament. But he is a really, really good player to add back into the fold. 22 minutes a night over the course of his season, 10 points, 5.8 rebounds, 2 assists, 60% from the floor. Really, really impressive center that they're adding back to their roster. And so you have him, you have Skarnowski, and Duke's front court, certainly loaded up without a doubt as far as what they are going to have. They also bring in Cam Williams, a 5-star, top 10 overall player who you'd expect is going to get major minutes right away. They've continued to load up with high school talent that is elite, and they have let's see, they have 3 of the top 10 players in the country headed to play for Duke according to Rivals rankings, with Deron Rippey Jr. and Bryson Howard, who's right up the road from me here in the Dallas area. And then they add a 7-footer who I actually kind of laid eyes on, Maxime Meyer, a 7'1" center from IMG by way of Canada. So they have loaded up in the front court. They have added more talent. They continue to be one of those top teams as far as how to reload, how to be elite. And that's before we get to them adding back Sebastian Wilkins, who redshirted this past year and is just, another depth piece in kind of that front court, maybe a combo forward in a sense, but was a power forward out of high school, 6'8", 220, was a top 100 prospect. So he redshirted. They are focused on developing him in a big way, and we'll see. Maybe he has a role. So Duke is loaded back up, but their biggest news that they got, obviously, is the massive recruiting battle that went on for John Blackwell coming over from Wisconsin. They got that addition Tuesday night, I believe, as he announced that decision. 6'4", 203 pounds, shooting guard. He had over 1,500 points at Wisconsin in 3 years. This past year, 19.1 points per game, 38.9% from three-point range on 7.3 attempts per game. So he was letting it fly from beyond the arc and producing at a really impressive rate, and was able to have one of those top seasons. And this is ACC on ACC crime in a sense, because John Blackwell, a lot of the buzz was built around him in Louisville and the hot start for the Cards and finish for the Cards in the transfer portal, which we'll talk about. But John Blackwell ends up heading to Duke. He is the second transfer portal addition for the Blue Devils. Again, we'll have to ask Connor O'Neill to see kind of what's next for Duke. What's the process like from now to the rest of the roster, and we'll see if the Blue Devils are done. But they bring back. They could bring back Caleb Foster as well, who's not announced his plans. Maybe he doesn't announce his plans. Caden Boozer is back in that backcourt. So a lot of talent back there, and just going to be a really, really impressive player that comes into the ACC, a really timely pickup for Duke to go ahead and get him on board. So Duke's reloaded. It's not surprising. It just happens to be a year that so many teams that you would think the days, and I think this is where the departure from some of the trends in the early days of the transfer portal kind of hurt coaches in a sense, because they're over there having to navigate that. They're having to navigate those expectations of, oh, you better have your guys lined up before they hit the portal, which has been drilled into college fans around the country for years. But guess what? Those programs aren't able to do that anymore because agents are involved at such a level that they are, because they continuously want to see what is actually the best offer for my player, what is actually the best role and fit for my client. And those things actually take a little bit of time. And to see some of the top transfer portal players still available out there, still able to be recruited, is just really interesting to me, because it is such a change from what we've seen in the past. I mean, you look at the top 10 transfer portal players available. The top 2 in the transfer portal are headed to the ACC. Louisville landing Flory Badunga, John Blackwell headed to Duke. But then from there, the next 4 players, all uncommitted. You have PJ Haggerty headed to Texas A&M. And you have a late addition, and I'm going to butcher this, but Baylor freshman wing Tunde Yusufu entered the portal. He's probably headed to UCLA is what it seems like. But that just gives you a look at the top 10. And there's some more commitments outside the top 10. We're seeing a lot of the top portal prospects be picked up, but there is still talent out there. There's still this next wave now of players that are going to fill out these rosters, and their agents maybe overplayed their hand. Maybe they're going to find out that they gave up some revenue sharing at some of their previous stops and are now going to be scholarship only. That's the risk with the portal, because when you go in and people are tossing around these hypotheticals, all while working on all of the things that can actually happen, all while retaining their roster, which is actually why I kind of almost sometimes like the idea that the Big Ten floated around bird rights, and how if you have a player on your team, you could sign him above the cap, so to speak. But you have these teams that are having to retain their top talent, and it's causing a change in the market. So I think it's really interesting to watch it unfold now with the second wave, but there's still top 100 talent available. And especially you get to the back later stages of it, there's a few more guys I noticed who were uncommitted. And so we'll have a couple more guys, I'm sure, added to the transfer portal, maybe in the top 100. But I think you're seeing some of these agents really play the game, as far as take those visits, hear a school out. And if a school ultimately offers you what we feel like is above your slot value, you probably need to take it. And that's when you can see things shut things down. But it is going to be a lot of interesting, I think, a lot of interesting storylines around finishing out these rosters, which we'll, of course, cover here. Before we move on to some of the other teams that have made some splashes here lately, I do want to remind you guys, of course, especially since we didn't have our Monday show, Security National Bank, sponsor of the show. We appreciate their support. Go to securitynational.bank for more information on how they can help you navigate your personal finances or your business banking. We bank with them as a business, and we're thrilled with all of the attention to detail that we get from them, all while having that family-friendly vibe. And it's really fun for us to see that grow as we've built that relationship with them, both on a personal and professional level. So we, got together just last weekend and hung out and just caught up on life and things like that over a beverage. So we appreciate our friends at Security National Bank for sponsoring All Access AM. Make sure you guys look them up, securitynational.bank, for more information. North Carolina has had quite the week. And a week ago, we were talking about North Carolina having a week and how it was not going so hot. But it's crazy how things change. It's crazy how things quickly move in the right direction. And we've seen that with their additions from the transfer portal to come play for Michael Malone. And it's a prime example. Things take time. Things end up, working out themselves for some of these blue blood style programs. They already had Nicolas Avidalis, who we covered. That's a huge transfer portal addition, one of the top guards in the portal. But then they went out, and after, some of these players ended up departing their roster, they went out and loaded up. And it's going to be really interesting to see how some of these players, the trio that they've gotten just on Tuesday, impact this roster. And let's dive into some of those guys they added. Florida Atlantic's Maxime Logue transferred to UNC. They're getting a depth piece in the front court with him. Native of France, 2 years of college ball under his belt. He's also played 3 years with the French national team as well. So 6'9", 232 pounds, 7'4" wingspan, big body. I like that they added somebody who can certainly fit in the mold of what you need to play in the ACC with the size perspective. And you add him coming off a season where he averaged 4.8 points per game, 3.1 rebounds per game this past season off the bench for FAU. Again, depth piece here. We'll get to the two major additions for Michael Malone with Matt Abel coming into the fold, and a player like Terrence Brown bringing his talents to Chapel Hill. There's a lot to like when it comes to Matt Abel and what he's going to bring to the table, bringing him over from North Carolina State to add to the backcourt. Really versatile. I think can kind of play multiple spots with his size at 6'5", can catch off the dribble, or catch and shoot a little bit. So there's some of that to his game. But when you see somebody like Matt Abel, flip sides of that, rivalry, I mean, it's not Duke, Carolina, or whatever, but, when you see that type of a major move, becoming the first player to move from NC State to North Carolina, that's the first time it's happened since World War II that this happened. And a former top 20 prospect as well, coming out of high school. And he has 3 years of eligibility remaining. A major addition for North Carolina. 8.8 points, 3.4 rebounds, 1.2 steals in 34 games. He was one of the top bench players under Will Wade in that lone season. 41.6% from the field, 35.5% from three-point range. He's going to want to take the next step in his game, really develop over the course of this offseason and push the pace that Michael Malone wants as far as the culture. It seems like he's a really good culture addition. He's going to, I think, bring some mental toughness to his game. That's something to the team. That's something Will Wade had kind of talked up with him. But when you have Advalis coming into the fold, when you add Matt Abel, and then you're able to grab Terrence Brown from Utah, that's a big deal. And that comes on top of, keeping somebody like Jerron Stevenson, Maximo Adams for this North Carolina team. And it seems like when you have this roster built out the way it is, now you're feeling a little bit better because that first kind of run for Michael Malone and company was a little interesting. Was something that of course, Carolina fans are sitting there saying, "Well, how do we fix this? How do we do this and do that in the portal? Like, what do we do by hiring Michael Malone here?" Things take time; they really do. And as we see this, I think as we see this process play out, this is where I think Carolina deserves a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. I know Mike Malone's going through a little bit of an adjustment time. I don't know how it's going to go on the court. That's where I maybe have questions because he's coached at the highest level. We've seen him have success. He's been a product, in a sense, of some incredible NBA talent to get to that level of success. But still, he's coached at the highest level. So how does that apply to the college game? How is he able to manage these guys and build a team over the course of this offseason going into this season? And you bring in somebody like Terrence Brown, who can run the show for you, was a high use player at Utah, 33% of the team shots. That's top 15 nationally, 19 points per game. You almost would rather him at 19 points per game. You'd rather that be maybe up like 22 points per game, just with that amount of usage, I would imagine. But 6'3", athletic, can really get up and go. I think the way he's going to be able to put defenders in a bind in any sort of pick and roll sets. Those are things that a lot of people have kind of talked about, including our team at Inside Carolina, which is the number one site for. I mean, it seems like basketball fans. I mean, they do an incredible job, but Carolina fans, of course, make sure you guys check them out at InsideCarolina.com. And when you add Terrence Brown, you have somebody that can certainly handle the ball, be a veteran player with 3.8 assists per game coming into the fold. And quite honestly, he was just on a bad team, so he got his last year. Now he's coming to a North Carolina team that they'd certainly love to see him put things together at a higher level in the team concept and figure that out. So we will see what North Carolina does in the front court. I think maybe looking to address that position a little bit more and see what they can do there. That just seems like one of the tidbits that I saw floating around out there. But North Carolina is certainly going to be one of those teams that looks to upgrade the rest of the talent still with some of these other portal options that are floating around out there. Louisville is another team that is continuously, made major waves in the transfer portal. And one of the latest guys that they are expected to host is Gabe Dines, the 7'5" USC transfer center, is expected to come on a visit Thursday. He's fresh off of Xavier on Tuesday. He's at Kentucky on Wednesday, which if you want to see a fan base down bad, if you want to see a blue blood that I'm talking about having a tough time in the transfer portal right now, it is. I can't imagine there's a more high profile program nationally that is struggling in the transfer portal the way Kentucky is, and especially relative to all the things that they can do and spend and whatever. Dines is expected to visit Louisville on Thursday, NC State on Friday. So this is maybe a little bit of a good segue here as we are talking about Louisville, of course, but also we'll take a quick look at UNC or at NC State and look at what they just added in the transfer portal as well. Again, adding another transfer portal commitment in the front court. But Gabe Dines is expected to visit Louisville. This past season, he did average 2.9 points, 2.3 rebounds in just under 12 minutes per game. He previously was at Youngstown State, so he's got some experience. Clearly, this is a depth play. Again, I urge you guys to listen to me when I say this. You have players that are not going to be paid off of revenue sharing that will eventually land on your team. And the the thing that you are going to watch for is how those players then get fit into the roster. I think basketball is coming into focus here on this. They're figuring this out. I think basketball was, remember, last year was uncapped. So everybody on every team probably got something, and they got it paid up front with the thought that some of those players would certainly be retained. And I've seen that play and be easier to be retained. And we've seen that. So when you watch somebody like Gabe Dines and what he's looking for, now he's looking for his best spot. I mean, you look at his next stop. I don't know what happened at USC, but all of those visits are okay, cool. We're adding somebody who's done just a tiny little bit at the high major level. Just again, tiny being key there. Tiny little bit at the high major level. He's experienced. He's got size. He's very unique, being 7'5". Let's bring him in, and maybe he's a scholarship guy. Maybe some of these schools do a little bit of something, but for that type of production, I don't think so. I don't think that's the trend with college basketball. I think you're going to see college basketball teams spend on that 1 through 10, 1 through 11 type of range. And so keep that in mind as you watch these recruitments unfold. But Alvaro Folgueras committed to Louisville, adding to their highly touted transfer portal haul. 6'9", 215-pound power forward comes from Iowa to the Cardinals. He adds a major piece for the Cardinals heading to the program under Pat Kelsey, which has just had a terrific run in the transfer portal. This this season, believe he averaged 14.1 points per game, 9 rebounds per game for Iowa. And he is now going to be on his third school after coming over from Robert Morris to Iowa. Big pickup for the Cardinals here as they continue to here we go. 8.4 points and 3.6 rebounds per game for the Hawkeyes this year. I was trying to figure that out on his stats page a little bit. And he stepped up, in the NCAA tournament. He stepped up in the clutch. He's got some of that experience that you want, that Louisville needs. They are, I think, in certainly win now mode. They've got Adrian Woolley coming back, a big pickup there. And they continue to retain some of their top talent pretty well across multiple sports. But when you see this roster and you see what they put together in the transfer portal, you have to respect it. And you have to say, okay, they are going out and they are trying to win now, and they are trying to make their statement, over the course of this offseason, and hope it carries over into the season. So it's going to be fascinating to watch it unfold for Louisville. We did have a couple of other commitments in the transfer portal here. One of them coming from UC Irvine center Kyle Evans. He led the nation in blocks with 115 last year. This will be his final year of eligibility, and he adds elite rim protection to the Wolfpack. Justin Gainey needed that size, and he was a Big West Defensive Player of the Year, and averaged just 2.3 fouls per 40 minutes. So a really impressive performance in that respect. 12 points, 8.7 rebounds on 62% from the field. Really nice pickup here for NC State. And he adds to the backcourt addition with Christian Hammond and Preston Edmead, and then Mikey Wilkins, a redshirt freshman forward addition from the transfer portal. So they do have some talent coming into NC State. I don't think it is where it needs to be. I think they certainly have they really have some I don't want to say issues, but they still have some spots to fill. There's no question about that for NC State, and they've got to figure out a lot of that here. Is again, they have a lot on their table that they've got to figure it out and to be competitive in year one under Justin Gainey, like Miami was this year under Jay Lucas, another first-time head coach. So when you look at what's next for some of these programs around the ACC, Deshane Montgomery from Dayton is one that did visit NC State. 13.4 points on 49% shooting for Dayton last year. They're still involved in that recruitment with Ole Miss and South Carolina, a couple others out there for sure, with Virginia Tech. uh, hosting Gavin Sykes from Long Beach State, 19.4 points, was second in the league in scoring as the 6'5" guard visited Virginia Tech over the weekend. And he's also checking out TCU as well. Arkansas State shooting guard Christian Harmon averaged 12.8 points per game and has done some Zoom meetings. He's got a Georgia Tech visit set. He averaged 12.8 points per game this year and looking at some other visits as well. But Georgia Tech did pick up a commitment in the transfer portal from Colby Garland, San Jose State guard, final year of eligibility. This will be a nice building block for Scott Cross to work around, with him coming over from the Mountain West, playing for San Jose State, 29 appearances, 27 starts, 20.3 points, 3.3 rebounds, 4.6 assists per game, shot 49% from the field, and a solid 37.2% from three-point range. I like Scott Cross's staff. He's added a couple guys I'm familiar with in Wes Flanagan and Matt Fraschilla coming down there to help out on the staff, you know, in a role. I don't know titles these days. It's like football with basketball, with the way they've expanded the roles of assistants. But Georgia Tech did land him. Ring Neary is going to visit Wake Forest this week. There are a few other programs involved there, some high major, some mid major. 6'8" forward. This is a sophomore. Was at University of Missouri, Kansas City this year, where he averaged 8.5 points and 6.3 rebounds per game. Okay, before we transition here to little SMU and their status, because they picked up one of the top point guards in the transfer portal, I do want to remind you guys about our friends at the La La Land Foundation. La La Land Foundation, actually, I went by this morning and picked up a little La La Land coffee, keeping it warm since I'm talking so much, got the lid on it, so to speak. But the La La Land Foundation is an extension of the La La Land Kind Cafe. And if you've never been in one, it just exudes happiness, kindness. They tell you that, hey, love you when you walk out the door. Just helps start your day out a little bit better than maybe you'd even expect. But also, they deliver great coffee and all sorts of different drinks and pastries and things like that. You can sit in there and work a little bit. But the La La Land Foundation is changing lives for youth in America who are transitioning into adulthood from the foster care system. And the way you can help is going to lalalandfoundation.com and figuring out how you can make an impact. Can you donate money? Can you donate things in kind? Can you organize a corporate sponsorship or partnership with the La La Land Foundation? Could you volunteer? Could you be a mentor? Could you offer internships? Those are all ways that you can help people transition from foster care, the foster care system, into adulthood and navigate that process. And everybody needs a helping hand. And that's what the La La Land Foundation is all about. So we appreciate their support of us here at All Access AM. They just makes you feel good. So appreciate La La Land Foundation. When I look at SMU and what they've done in the transfer portal, again, a program that, you know, you can tout the money, you can tout the, you can tout the trajectory, I think, from a national sense with the way they've now made the NCAA tournament. You can certainly point to the end of the season, and as an SMU fan, you could be frustrated as a national, viewer of college basketball. You could say, okay, they've absolutely flamed out, and the whole BJ Edwards thing that went on. But the reality is they took a step forward making the NCAA tournament this year. They had some key wins. They finally got over the hump on some certain things that haven't happened around SMU for quite some time. And they went out and added one of the top available transfer point guards in Rowan Brumbaugh, coming in from Tulane for his final year of eligibility. This is now going to be his fourth school. He redshirted in 2022 at Texas, then headed to Georgetown, then spent the last 2 years at Tulane, where he landed on the All-American Conference. Second team honors, 19.2 points per game, 4.9 rebounds per game, 3.5 assists per game. Career 36.1% three-point shooter, has really been able to do some things from beyond the arc there. He had size to SMU's backcourt, which lacked that with Boopy Miller. BJ Edwards and Dron Pierre Jr. Were solid guys as far as their size, but um, when you see what he brings to the table as far as his size goes, that's an upgrade. I think SMU's kind of honing in on that a little bit as an area that they've got to improve, both at the point guard position, which they accomplished that by landing Brumbaugh over the likes of BYU, Indiana, South Carolina, and others that were linked to him, but also seeing that in the front court. They get Jaden Toombs and Jermaine O'Neal Jr., a forward and a big man and a guard, respectively, to announce their returns for next season. But they also are in the mix for some other notable, names across the European landscape that I think will add size. I think will add some, professional experience to this team. I'd expect at the end of the week we get a little bit more clarity on that. Jerry Morphew asked about that in the chat. Do you have any names or positions of the European players Enfield is scouting now? They are. We're going to keep a couple of them behind the scenes here for you guys. Just gotta can't what is it? Can't bite the hand that feeds you. So those names will come out, I think, here in the near future. It would not surprise me if we saw something happen at the end of the week, but also those guys got to get through school. The academic side of things, they have to get visas, they have to get their NIL situation worked out because they, as an international player, they have different NIL rules that they have to abide by. So there's all sorts of different things that go into getting an international player to come over. We've seen kind of a run lately on international players that have made commitments. There have been some notable ones. I know Utah's like half their lineup, I feel like, are Euros. So they're trying to change that trajectory of the program after a brutal year this year. But for SMU, they needed that Rowan Brumbaugh domino to fall after missing on Bangai Dak. But they weren't sitting on their hands. They were certainly working the phones, traveling around, going out and recruiting these players across the globe, and work on that in your process while your coaching staff is still working on some of these other guys and trying to recruit them and things like that. So I had my phone in my back pocket and it went off. You never know in the transfer portal window is still here as far as guys announcing, but SMU was able to go out and continue to work on those options. And they're a team that I think fans around that program are certainly still looking for more splashes. I think they're coming. They are going to host Johan Munch, the Oregon State big man, about 6'11", 7-footer. That's going to come to campus for a visit Wednesday. That'll start Thursday. Tennessee's been linked with him. He's kind of a depth piece, but he also developed really well. He took a jump from his freshman year to sophomore year. He played a role. He had, I think he started half the year for them. So that would be another nice piece to pair with a difference maker that they're trying to bring in from maybe the European ranks. And look, another thing, I mean, again, we're seeing players still enter the portal. It would not shock me if there are some others that are coming into the portal late that maybe SMU looks at, or maybe some of these other teams looked at. And so there is still, I mean, it's not even May. And there are going to be good players out there for teams to add, round out their rosters, and it'll be fun to figure that out. So sorry I can't share any names on the Euros, Jerry, but all in due time, and I'll definitely tell the pod if they go elsewhere or if they fizzle out or what have you. But speaking of fizzling out, Florida State lost a kind of surprising transfer portal player. They lost Thomas Basong, who was with the Seminoles and announced he was going to return next season after appearing in 33 games as a freshman this past season with 17 starts. Instead, he's entered the transfer portal. 5.9 points, 3.5 rebounds across 19 minutes per game. He was the first high school commit for Luke Laux, but the 6'8" forward who at one time was at Overtime Elite, who's from Paris, has entered the portal and is going to head elsewhere. And it's one of those surprising moves that, a lot of those teams are trying to avoid. And, when you're Florida State, You're trying to build a program. You're trying to build off of what was, I think, a strong start for Luke Laux, the especially considering the start to the season that he has. Um, those are some of the things that you don't want to see. You don't want to see a guy like that leave. But they did add to Matt Lasser's point as we were recording last week. Florida State was waiting on Sebastian Rancic from Colorado, big forward edition. They got it, 12.3 points, 5.6 rebounds per game, 6'11", Slovakian, heads to Tallahassee. We talk about Boulder's different, but man, you go from Slovakia to Tallahassee, Florida. And as a Florida native, I mean, Tallahassee is state capital, but it is quite the culture shock, I'm sure, for the Slovak. But they did land the front court edition there. Maybe that had something to do with it. I can't imagine, with just the size difference in positional play, that being a major thing for Basong to head elsewhere, but a surprising one nonetheless. So when you see that happen, you're reminded of the cutthroat nature of the transfer portal. And there are a couple others late, and I'm sure we'll see them pop up even more over the course of the final hours of these players being able to enter, of players popping up in the portal that you're like, oh wow, that was kind of surprising. So that was one, though, that certainly caught FSU off guard from what it seemed like. But something that didn't catch us off guard from our friends over in Tallahassee is the naming of Ashton Daniels as the starting quarterback for Mike Norvell this year. And Ashton Daniels, according to Andrea Adelson, did get named the starting quarterback, and it's not really surprising. And we've felt that way. But last year for Auburn, he did throw for 797 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks, and added 280 yards on the ground with 2 touchdowns on 63 carries. Let's go back to when Ashton Daniels was at Stanford, a really promising, high-level quarterback prospect. Ultimately, there wasn't enough, I think, talent around him, development around him to make staying at Stanford make sense for him. He leaves, goes to Auburn. Auburn was a mess last year. They make a coaching change. Alex Golish makes his own quarterback decision and brings in some new faces, and you see that quarterback room go completely in a different direction. Well, now under Mike Norvell, I think Ashton Daniels has the best opportunities in his entire career so far, which really isn't a stretch to say, but the best opportunity in his career so far to actually have success and to sustain that success and maybe be one of the fun storylines of the ACC this year if he can produce at a high level, fend off Kevin Sperry, who put up a good fight, but like we said on this show, we were not expecting that to be kind of a real competition there. And sure enough, that ends up being the case, where Ashton Daniels is named the starting quarterback at the end of spring. So now he has that role on the team. He has that extra juice behind him as a leader. He can assert himself even more. He just seems like a good guy. So I'm rooting for him in that respect. But it really helps having the run game added to this Florida State offense once again, as Mike Norvell with this offensive line will certainly need to find answers in that respect so that they can have not only a successful quarterback situation, but also be able to run the football as a whole. They've got options. They've got different faces back there. If you guys heard Matt Lasser on the show last week talk about that, that was certainly something that we paid attention to. But when you're seeing these types of quarterback battles play out and you see them name a starter after the spring, and it's pretty apparent how, I don't want to say not close it was, but not close it was. So good for Ashton Daniels. Kevin Sperry's a good dude. He's from around here. So I covered him a little bit early on in his recruitment, but it is it's an interesting spot that he's in to have to try and resurrect this FSU program after he's gone through his own trials and tribulations as a quarterback and trying to, figure out how to generally revive his career after being put in, I would argue, really interesting just positions as a whole. So best of luck to Ashton Daniels this year as he is FSU's starting quarterback. Okay. This is where I want to take the show for the rest of it here. I do want to tell you guys about Sportsbo in just a second, but what we're going to do is we're going to look at some trends that I observed from this Monday's Global Sports Business Summit here in Dallas. It's a really interesting event put on at SMU in conjunction with the Dallas Sports Commission, which is, of course, having a major role in the World Cup being in North America right now. A lot of things are certainly there for the sports world to consider, and especially in the college space. And this is kind of a perfect time for all this to happen, because when you see college sports right now and where it is, and mind you, I'm going to be talking about this as we see the College Sports Commission start to go to war over multimedia rights deals with colleges. As you know, they're going to battle over that third party associated entity role that those multimedia rights holders play with colleges. And what really is, in my opinion, at the root of this is the College Sports Commission and NIL Go are treating these entities like Learfield and Playfly differently as associated entities. And the issue that I have with this is I agree that a Learfield and a Playfly, the way they execute these deals in the marketplace, are associated entities. They are. And the leaked reporting on this, which basically said that the plaintiff attorneys in the House versus NCAA settlement are filing a motion requesting that the magistrate judge declare that school multimedia rights partners be exempt from College Sports Commission's NIL enforcement. And it comes after so much frustration with the CSC, and deals will still be required to be submitted. But Learfield and Playfly, in their current rules for most universities across the country, are their own company within the school, and they are separate, but all of those people have a vested interest in making sure whatever school it is gets successful NIL deals across the finish line. And so I'm in the camp that they are associated entities. It would be nicer for the colleges if they were deemed not associated entities because their parent company is not an associated entity. Like all of these different, subsets of Learfield and Playfly that work for these universities, and they're a, they're a third party that works within the athletic department. But when you see that be pushed back, if they were deemed associated entities, it certainly would impact them in terms of the scrutiny of the deals that come under fire, right? But if they're deemed not associated entities, then that opens the doors for collectives to really fire back up again. The true form of collective, I would add. But what you're going to see this open up is so many different third-party avenues that schools really are pulling the strings on, in a sense, be able to, file their own type of movement and try to push back on the associated entity label, because Learfield and Playfly are sitting there as an entity that has a vested interest in whatever the school does and successfully does. So it is in their best interest for deals to be pushed through, and for deals to be pushed through that, challenge and push the envelope and so forth. But if you get a company to work with you on that deal, like they would be doing, you still have to have that company that you convince to work with you to tango. So that's like the school going out and trying to negotiate with, one of their or their sponsors, for a deal with a player. Hey, why don't you do this instead? Why don't you spend a little bit more over here in NIL, and we'll give you a little bit more airtime in the stadium. Those are the types of things that are probably happening around the country. And so if that's the case with Learfield and Playfly, it's not really that different. But if it's not that different, it then opens up this world for so many different companies to go after this and to work on this and to start again going after above the cap dollars. And so one of the questions was at the Global Sports Summit is who holds the power in college sports right now? And I thought it was so interesting because you could argue the fan, you could argue the player, you could argue the college, you could argue agents, you can argue all sorts of different coaches, you could argue all sorts of different things. And I don't necessarily have a drop dead, this is who I feel has the power in college sports, but I think this is becoming certainly a player owned enterprise in a sense. And the reason why I say that is because you're seeing these players get more and more of what they want. And to be clear, I'm for that. I'm for these guys not necessarily fighting and getting what others did not. I'm for having these players get their rightful share of what has become an incredibly fruitful business for colleges. And you could say what you want about athletic departments running in the red. College athletic departments run in the red for a couple of reasons. They don't, as universities, necessarily go after all of the revenue streams that the NFL does, that the NBA does, that the NHL does. You think about all sorts of signage in the pro leagues. You think of those media rights deals, which are totally done as a whole. They don't have an NFC or AFC contract. It's an NFL contract. So that is one big difference there as far as the monetary value that colleges have. But colleges inherently aren't littered with professional level sponsorship, signage, and placement as far as advertising goes and sponsorship dollars. So colleges for many, many years have chosen, for the most part, to give up a lot of that because it's either something that's against a university policy or it doesn't make sense for it to take away from the clean environment and the beauty of some of these great cathedrals in college football and college basketball in particular. But now we're seeing, because the players at these professional levels do end up getting a large amount of money, salary, bonuses. Of course, they have, player escrow and things of that nature. Well, now because the players are rightfully getting some of that in the college space for the big business it creates, college athletic departments have to find different ways to monetize and capitalize on revenue streams. And if colleges do that, and there are going to be some that are the haves and the have-nots. That's the NFL, right? The Cowboys and what they get for sponsorship dollars is very different than probably what Jacksonville gets, just from a base term of stadium sponsorship and beyond, and local sponsors, things like that. So there's still haves and have-nots in the NFL and in the other leagues. There's no question. So there's still going to be haves and have-nots in the college space. But the fun part about college athletics, in my opinion, is it is a blank slate still predominantly. You have some basic sponsors that have been around major colleges for a long, long time, right? You have your car dealership, you have Coca-Cola or Pepsi, you have this school, that school having a big partnership with some local companies that are big supporters of the school and university as a whole, and they run it through their business and things of that nature. But now the door is opened for so many different ways to monetize the athletes and help pay the athletes in that sense. Like if you're a school and you're creating your own content page or your own show that you're going to run in-house, you're going to sell sponsorship off of that. Well, what you're also going to do is you're going to try to work through NIL deals with players to appear on those shows, like an NFL player having his own show, like a superstar player having his own, not only just some of these guys having their own podcasts, but I'm talking about, hey, a coaching show, a player show. Local radio still does those things from time to time. No different. So when you bring in that revenue, let's say a school signs a deal with a sponsor to $100,000 and they now have a show that they sponsor. Maybe it's a weekly, maybe it's a biweekly. That some of that money can go to an athlete that might appear on that show or athletes. So that's a new revenue stream. That's a new way for the athletic department to find just a little bit of a way to get closer to the black. And then on top of all the different signage and sponsorship and digital opportunities that are in a college stadium, that's why you're seeing some of the new stadiums like a Northwestern. And I'm sure some of these stadiums renovations like Nebraska and Auburn, you're going to see some of that happen. But Florida State is going toward those sponsorship patches on the jerseys. They are hoping to land an additional $7 million in marquee sponsorships. They are even exploring the potential naming rights of Doak Campbell Stadium, which is just wild to me. Like, that is sacred for most of these programs out there. I know Louisville, I believe, I forget what their stadium name is now, quite frankly, but it was they have the KFC Yum Center in basketball. So those are all things that are out there for schools to monetize if they so choose. But right now, we're still in a world where there's Moneyball for college coaches. And until we see colleges maximize their levels of sponsorship and figuring out what is the secret sauce for each school, and each school is different, you're going to continue to see a lot of the complaints around dollars and money spent and things of that nature. But the hard part is for colleges is these players, I don't want to say are still underpaid in a sense, but you have roster spots that are still scholarship only now, which is fine. And I think that's an incredible value and a major, major piece. But that's also not what the model was built on that we're now living in. Like if you gave me my choice, I would say, okay, make them employees, make them pay for their scholarship to be on the team, and they're going to pay it out of whatever they're making, right? So each player at minimum is going to make 150, 200,000, depending on 250 or whatever, not per year, but over the course of 4 years at minimum, because some of these schools are public, private, what have you. And then you can tax it. You can do all those things. A player could use the money spent on a scholarship as far as on tuition as far as a tax write-off, probably continuing education and things of that nature. But the last takeaway I had from the Global Sports Business Summit is you really have schools that are trying to figure this out, and there's this battle. There's not a representative of the NCAA as a whole, and I mean NCAA as a whole is in all of these colleges. There's no czar like a lot of people bring up. There's no key representative from the player side. The players across all of FBS have elected to represent them. There's not a group of 12 or the president and things like that. So there is this, everybody's trying here, and they're trying to find ways to make money to pay for the current world. But there's also players that are probably always going to want more in a sense. And now agents are involved in all those things. But we're no closer to solving this than we were however many years ago now when NIL has started. It's just created different iterations of this. I still think the calendar is the biggest issue for college football in particular. I think college basketball is getting closer here. And if we can find a way to see multi-year contracts get a little bit more common, we're going to learn who can evaluate, who can figure out what to pay and where, and see a little bit more parity in college sports, which I think is the big win. So those were just some of the takeaways. I know it was a little rambling, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I hope you guys check out our friends at Sportsmo on your way out, and go ahead and set up your account for next season. Download the Sportsmo app today and get them all locked in with you ahead of next season, and appreciate our friends at Sportsmo for all they do for us here at All Access AM. So hope you guys check them out today and enjoy the rest of your week. But I will see you guys Thursday morning on another edition of All Access AM. I'm Billy Embody. Appreciate you guys watching, and we'll catch you guys next time.
College basketball hits different with Sportsmo. You tap, they score. You pledge, they drop a 3. You give as a group, They win as a team. At this point, you're not watching a game, you're in it. Download the app, fund your wallet, and get in the game. Download Sportsmo. Power the play.